I have not one, but two batteries with a broken connector on it. These are XT90 connectors for a large lithium battery, and these are a pain to solder, especially if you don't have the right equipment, but I've always made do with my cheap soldering iron, and I figured I record the process so that maybe you can learn something from it. Editor Daniel here. It was only once I did the second battery that I figured out the easy way to do this, so stay around for that. XT90 connectors, they're pretty much the same as the 60 or the 30. All are a bit difficult, but yeah, these are the largest heat sink, so most difficult to heat up. And just before we get started, batteries are pretty dangerous. Like if I take the connector off this and the leads touch, they'll get a huge spark, and I want to prevent that. So be very, very careful when you solder directly onto battery leads. It's much easier to get started soldering a connector onto something that is not under power. And yeah, by broken, I mean, have a look at this. The connector came right off, like it broke on both sides, I think because there's some solder in there, it's not as flexible as the rest of the wire, and then over time of using it, even though we were careful never to pull on the cord, this thing has been charged and used at least 300, 400 times, and at some point, yeah, it just breaks right off. So let's get right to it. So we need to get a lot of heat into the connector in as little time as possible, because if you hold it there for a lot of time, then you end up frying the connector itself. And to get a lot of heat in, one thing that can help is to use the biggest tip that you own. Another thing is to get the strongest iron that you can find. This one is 65 watts, that will do the trick. But if you have one with an active tip heating, that is, yeah, of course, much better. There you go up to 100, 120 watts, I think. But I'm pretty sure this will work because I already made a start on the first one. Also, it's really convenient to have a good clamp. Like these kind of things are not so nice to hold with a crocodile clamp, and these parallel clamps, they hold these kind of connectors much better. Another important thing is to put your connector into the mating end. By doing this, you prevent that the pins inside wobble if the housing heats up, like on this one. Because I did such a bad job at this, you can imagine that when the housing started melting over here, that these pins had the chance to rotate in the housing and they can no longer use a connector. But by connecting it on the other side with a mating piece, you're less likely to heat up the whole thing and start to wobble the whole thing around. So if you have two parts, the mating parts of the connector, just connect it together before you start soldering. All right, let's set this up. Of course, there's a sleeve. Then you have to push your wire through it before you make any connection. I'll slide it to the back so it doesn't sit in the way. And then, yeah, now that I'm going to strip the wire, from now on I have to watch out that I no longer touch the positive end with this thing. Let's see if that fits. Yeah, the whole thing needs to come a little bit closer. Okay, now that I know that I have it in place, let's first put some solder on the wire. Normally I would want the wire to heat up and then the solder can flow right in the wire by touching it, but because this wire is so thick, I basically heat up the whole first 10 centimeters if I do that, and I don't have patience to wait for that. I don't think it's any helpful either. Nice thing is once you get some solder onto the wire is that the contact with the iron becomes much bigger, which makes it easier to flow heat from the iron into the wire. Alright, get it nice and soaked. And because I want to make sure it fits into the hole, I will skip putting solder into the connector hole, which may or may not be a bad idea. You tell me, guys. Yeah, it's already pretty hot over here. Alright, let's turn this slightly above normal temperature, so let's at 400, so it's going to be even easier to sink the heat in. Actually, let's put you a little bit closer. So some solder on the tip. And use that to heat up the wire. And now use the wire to heat up the whole connector. And now it's lucky if we can heat up the connector enough before all the heat is being fed into the rest of the wire or in the rest of the connector. I think we're getting something here. Be generous with the solder. And don't allow it to cool down. So if you have to start over, then everything around is already hot and you want to try and heat the surrounding elements as little as possible. I think we did an okay job here. Let's inspect it. Well, I could be happier. There doesn't seem to be a lot of solder in the back sides of these connectors, not on either of them. But I'm a bit scared that if I try and fix that, the chance of me touching the other connector is quite big, and I don't want to use my solder iron to short between those two sides, of course, because then we get a very big jump. So what shall I do? Do I just accept it? So I want to make a heat-proof protector between these 2 points so that I don't. It's not as easy to make a connection with a soldering iron. And I just found that I have this this sleeve from the wire that I had trimmed off, and I can plop that between. And just to secure it, I'll use some Kapton tape, which is quite heat resistant, but not heat resistant enough by itself. I think to just hold this thing in place, it'll do fine. There we go. And now this is pretty shielded from the other side, and I can safely work on the positive lead. I am not too certain how useful this is. It feels like I'm just coating the outside rather than actually making a connection. Yeah, no, I'm giving up. Potentially dangerous and not really making an improvement. But the gap on this side I think I can still fix. Very generous. There's now a big blob on the back, but that can't hurt so much as long as the sleeve still fits over. Alright, let's do the same trick on the other side. Maybe it's a good moment to point out that also my crocodile clips, they could of course jump between these 2 points, which would also be bad. So yeah, it's really requires you to be super mindful of everything that could potentially go wrong all the time. Alright, once again, I'm not sure if it's good, but it's probably good enough. So I'm going to leave it at that. And there we have it. 1 battery connector done. 1 more to go. Let's see if we can do the other one more smoothly. Okay, so I was recording a time lapse, but I just realized that I think I found an even better method because I'm very satisfied with how this one turned out. Let's see if I can hold it in front of the camera. Yes. Because I managed to put the connector on its side and then managed to push down onto it with the wire. And then, of course, all the solder flowed to the bottom, which is the side that's so difficult to touch. I don't know why I didn't figure this out earlier, but let's do this one more time with the camera a little bit closer so you can see what I'm getting at. Alright, should be good. So now for the new trick. Let's take this wire aside. Plonk this on here into this holder. This thing goes on top. I need to find something that I can grab this with. Let's do this one. No, this one. And then just lay it on there. Like that I can put pressure down with my soldering iron. Isn't that convenient? And whilst I'm doing this, gravity is helping me get it to the other side. Doesn't that look lovely? Let's see if our trick worked again. No, this one wasn't as nice. There's still a gap behind it over there. Let's see if we can fix that by pushing onto it a little bit harder. I'm just remelting this and pushing down. I felt it move a tiny bit. Maybe that's did the trick already. But I don't want to heat this up too long because, yeah, then the chance of ruining the connector becomes bigger as well. And the chance of burning my fingers also at some point. But so far, nothing's gone wrong. Yeah, that did great. Look at the back sides. I am so satisfied with this. Slide on the protector. Force it in. This one went much easier. And ta-da! A good connector. Two good connectors. That concludes today's soldering session. So yeah, the final trick was to be able to push down onto the connector, but also a big fat tip, a little bit more heat than you need, plug the connector into another connector. And yeah, if this is the kind of content that you like, subscribe, it's going to help me out. And otherwise, have a wonderful evening or day, wherever you are.